Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Heitland Show, where I interview experts from different fields to connect the dots of innovation and entrepreneurship. This is an Innovation Breakfast Club episode where I dig a little deeper into one specific topic with my guests. In this episode, we talk about retail, innovating through people on the front line. Welcome back to the show, Ulrike, Ron, and Stephen. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Innovation Breakfast Club. Great to have you. Great to see you again, and Happy New Year.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Nice to
Morning.
be back.
Morning, yeah.
Good morning.
Yes,
Good morning or afternoon, depending where you are in the world.
it's a global conversation for a global industry.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Well put, Ron. Well put. Well put.
So today is all, of course, about retail because you are the retail experts in the in my ecosystem, at least, and it's about innovating through people on the front line. That's our theme of today, and we start off with exploring stories you have experienced around this topic, stories where you have seen people from the front line innovating and changing the business to be better, to be more effective, whatever comes up in your mind. So who would like to start?
I can kick it off, John. I think traditional retail, regardless of the product categories, is an industry that we all know has been very slow to evolve with innovation for decades. And I think there's been this very traditional brick and mortar business with a team that sells a product that has a register, and the basics were in place. The evolution of the growth of e-commerce, did put some new ideas into there's some new ideas into how business operates a bit and where revenue streams coming from. And I wouldn't necessarily call that innovation. Where I think the most exciting things are happening are really what's happening right now, which is the focus on the team experience, number one, because we are in a world where the employee experience is first and foremost as we rebuild the infrastructure of the community of retail employees on the front line. And at the same time, the innovation happening in technology at the company side. So I'll give you a couple of really interesting examples. So as the growth of e-commerce grew, the ideas of like live stream shopping is a really interesting innovation where there are brands now that have built entire studios in the back of stores or even replaced customer facing businesses with live stream shopping. And so that began the idea of chat functions that take you from the website into the store team. So the kind of voice and knowledge of an in-store team that is done via chat through a website, which is significant improvement in conversion rates. So there's this kind of, the innovation is happening on the front line with the merge of online, offline, and meeting the customer where they are. So you could be chatting on Instagram, you could be live stream shopping, you could be chatting, you could be then take that chat into a video call. It's the worlds are merging, and it's a really important way to think about how it's innovating is that it's very channelless, but it's about the team experience first and foremost and teaching them some new skills that translates into exceptional customer experiences that are going to become even more important in the future.
Great start. Who wants to take on the next one?
Maybe I could jump in. Like so much what you just said, because this is the time of our front people. This is the time where we truly and finally really unleash and also put some responsibility, but also some encouragement into our frontline people. I think it's so nice with those new tools and new channels that people can embrace them and connect much better, delivering much better human interaction, no matter if it is online or physical. And as you said, in the past, I believe when we think about innovating on the front line, it was more about incremental improvements. So I agree, it was more about people should apply something that has been innovated somewhere back in the value chain, whether a new product, a new store type, etc. And it was more about applying things. And then our frontline people had been utilized to, just make things a bit better. But I think we have never put whether the power, but also the motivation to truly say, we believe in you, that you also can utilize your innovative mindset. And we also believe that we can have a feedback loop where we don't innovate somewhere in a headquarter, where we also listen very carefully and take back what people on the front line have to say and have to bring up. And that is something I truly hope that now we get some new self-confidence also from the frontline people, and that we hopefully foster a much better interaction and communication between headquarters and frontline.
Great point, Ulrike. I don't know if any of you guys have ever read a book called The Richer Way by a guy called Julian Richer. He was in the Guinness Book of Records at one time as having retail chains that had the most profitable stores per square foot in the whole world. Back in the day when he sold hi-fi separates. So those of us that may be old enough to remember that sort of thing, but audio, a guy that failed and started again. And one of the things that he really embraced was that retailers should stop calling it head office, right? That they should call it central support, because it was the stores that was the mechanism for having head office. Head office wasn't the business. The front line, the retail stores, the team was the business. And he really was a very, very early innovator in supporting like those guys on the front line. So the business had a hardship fund, for instance. So you could apply to the business, if your mum's washing machine broke and she couldn't afford a new one, you could apply to the hardship fund for money for her to buy a new washing machine. The guy went and bought 5 Rolls Royces and divided the United Kingdom up into 5 regions, and the best performing manager and team in the region got a chauffeur-driven Rolls Royce for a week, every week, and kind of really just for me, and I go back and I do read this book periodically, as you should, all good books, I think. You kind of there are little nuggets that I've missed around that, and I think some of the innovation, and it's great that we've got all this technology. It's great that we can do virtual shopping. We can have experiences in stores with video cameras and AI and all of that kind of stuff. But the innovation, I think, comes around, and I know you're passionate about this, Ron, as much as I am, about the team itself. Because they're the guys that have the knowledge, right? They're the guys that are talking to the customers, that are interacting with the product every day, that can give the feedback. And I think maybe some better innovations in HR in feeding that back. I was fortunate enough that when we started at store level, I was one of those people that worked hard enough that managed to get into kind of a head office role. But if you think about, and I don't know if your experiences are the same, head offices always recruit people from outside the business. It's very, it's probably more prevalent now, but back in my day, store people didn't get promoted up the chain in that way to go into a role that could effect change and innovate change, because they'd been doing it at the front line at the sharp end.
And I think, Stephen, the opportunity now that we have with the idea of hybrid work is that, at least today, January 2022, the majority of brands are not back in their offices. But the workforce, so in the US, of the working population, 50% of people, which includes everyone in frontline retail, has no work from home option. They are frontline, permanently frontline.
Yeah.
And so like the news is in this kind of idea of, well, we're not back in the office. Stores have never had this option. Absolutely. And so even today, 50% of the population can't work from home. And because their job doesn't allow it, but yet the office is. And so we are in a very unique situation where I think, I love what you said, Stephen, like the innovation actually has to happen about how we capture feedback and how we act on it and what we do with it in a new way from the office, because people aren't traveling, they aren't spending as much time in stores. Is that more, virtual calls? What is it that's your way to capture feedback, and then what do you do with that feedback? And that we have to find new ways to work when the office isn't together to support the field.
Throwing in a question towards that direction, is it then a leadership issue or a task of the company, or is it the frontline who needs to inspire the leadership and push it a little bit towards that direction? Or is it both? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, most likely it needs to be both. And first, it needs to be the leadership to set the prerequisites, to really set the field, so to say. You need to have a commitment that you truly want to keep, to speak on eye level. It's a commitment to say, I really want to bring new capabilities to my frontline people. And I want to encourage that. And I foster a culture where people, it doesn't matter where they sit in the company, work towards one common goal. And where every voice counts equal, where you can't say, oh, that's the frontline people, I don't mind, or you say just the one from the innovation department is the wisest in the world. So I think it is a question of culture, and that is usually being shaped or given the prerequisites by the leadership, but it is filled by everyone. So it doesn't matter it doesn't help if just the leadership takes a commitment, if the many people are not willing to fill it. So it also takes a lot of responsibility and a commitment from the frontline people to say, I want to grow. I want to explore those new possibilities. And I'm also willing to step up, because being in a store, you can also hide. But if you say, I'm willing to grow and I'm willing to put myself in front of a camera and do a live stream, I'm even willing to sell something through the metaverse or whatever, it's new things and you need to show up. So of course, Jens, I believe it needs to be both sides wanting to make a difference and committing to show up. Yeah.
I think you're right. I think the biggest factor in that, though, is the culture of the business. If the culture of the business doesn't foster that enthusiasm, then, as you say, it's easy to go and hide in the business somewhere, or think, well, it's not really my place to do this. All I think as Ron said, it's what you do with that feedback that's important. But you have to have this culture where we want to hear. It's not like we want to ask you the questions. We want you to tell us, what's going on. And I think that's a cultural thing that people feel it's okay for me to say, this doesn't work in store. And I know, you might have spent thousands of dollars on a campaign, but actually customers don't like it. Yeah. Or this worked brilliantly, but we did it for 2 weeks and now we're never going to do it again. But I mean, there's 100 variables, 1,000 variables on that. So I think it comes down to, absolutely right, the leadership. And I think even at, store level managers, we've all worked with great managers. I worked with a great guy very, very, very early on who fostered that. Tell us, don't wait for me to ask. Just it doesn't matter how bad the idea might be or how you might feel you might upset somebody about it. Just get it out and let people know. And it was safe to do that. So I think that's where it begins.
Yeah, and if I agree, Stephen, and on the flip side, when that doesn't exist, I think then it is about being more strategic and more planful, and think about it, just like Ulrike said, like the idea of it becoming ingrained into the culture. So it's not a strategy, it is the way we operate. We're always open. We love to learn. We act where we can. We provide feedback. It's a way of life. And I guess it's similar but different when you think about strategies around diversity and equity and inclusion and training. It's because it's the right thing to do, not because it's 2022 and we need to have a diversity strategy. And so there's so much that's kind of layered into culture and people here that is very much felt by the frontline team, because they're the largest population of any retail business. You know, it's and often not always the one put as the priority in the feedback loop. So we have a lot of work to do. I love that you had good experiences. I've had good and bad in that idea.
Oh, and I've had bad too, but yeah. I always think of this guy, and even today when I do workshops, I refer back to him because, you know, he just inspired me in that way that it's kind of in my DNA now. You know, it's
great.
So.
Yeah, and it's quite uneven. Let's say you have a retail store portfolio, you have 20 stores. You know, 10 might be very active, leading by example, and the other 10 not. So I believe if we don't make the word innovation too big, we can also foster the communication between stores, you know, more about what have you learned, what have you done better. I mean, we all know that for years, for decades, we have tried to really strengthen best practice sharing, though it happens on a too low level. And I think what can we do through technology, but also, again, through the culture of talking to each other, learning from each other. And then I like so much this leading by example. So even though, let's say you're a store manager, you're a team leader in a single store, you can still lead by example. And you can say, as you said, Ron, I ask myself at night when we close the doors and the team, what went well today and what not? What can we do tomorrow much better? What has been the most frequent asked customer question? What can we do about it? And I think if you do those things, you improve the business because you come closer to your customer, you serve them in a much better way, and that will be visible in figures. Yeah. So even if you work like that somewhere, someone will see, oh my God, they do an exceptional business and they're performing so much better than their peers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
If we take this, I think, and I'm maybe the worst person to say this because for me that's not innovation. It's every business should be doing that. That's just logic, in my world at least.
Yeah,
it's like a business.
You're right, but still it doesn't happen. You know, I was also in my previous experience, I was very keen on dividing what is improvement, what is development, and what is true innovation. But then I figured out that this is not fair to the ones that do those little steps each and every day, which are in the end equally important than the big things like changing a business model or finding new revenue streams. You know, in the end, a company, a corporation need to overperform on all levels, whether it is making existing things better or it is about bringing in things that are already industry standard, but not in your company to embed that, or bringing something to the market that has never been seen or heard before. So I think you can't say, I'm just concentrating on the big innovations, then you will be lost. Or you're just concentrating on, oh my God, how can I be 20 seconds faster on my register? Then you will be out of game anyways. So I think it needs all dimensions. And in order to not lose anyone, we should not divide so much. And if someone says, oh my God, I found a better way to decorate my shop window and I call it an innovation. Yeah, here you go. If it really makes a difference, then you can call it an innovation. Yeah. You know, and because otherwise you have those 2-3 class society again, you know, who does the best innovation and who does the least. So probably we should be a little bit more mild or more open on that.
Actually, you know, I think innovation is like one of those words now that's become a bit like entrepreneur. That, you know, we use it a lot in our language, but we have so many different facets of understanding about what it might be or how that might apply. But I think you're right, Ulrike. It's for some people that becomes confusing, and they think, well, I'm just doing much. Actually, no, you just innovated something that could really be impactful on the whole business. But they just see it as, well, you know, it's just an idea I had, or, you know, I've always done it this way, and now somebody's recognized it. So I think it's how we frame language is important in any business, in any relationship. But I think innovation's become one of those words that's now got confusing. Just like everybody's an entrepreneur, right?
And maybe it's different if you're a CEO of a company or senior vice president, or if you're a stockholder. So maybe we should allow different interpretations on different.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we go back to we have still included that, but the people part and the front line. What are, if we look forward now, we're in the start of 2022. The world is still in a pandemic state, and it's upside down everywhere right now. So what are the things, if we talk about frontline, what are the things you believe that needs to be happening in 2022, and maybe small tricks every frontline coworker, employee of a company could do for themselves as well?
I'll start. I think the first and foremost, it's making sure you're taking care of yourself. And the idea of, you're not great for your customer, you're not great on your team, you're not a great leader if you're not doing things that are about self-care, mental well-being, all of that. And so some of that may come through your company and resources that are available. And there are the great brands who provide incredible resources and opportunities for personal self-care and development. Some of that is more emotional. Some of it could be learning and development, because when you think about, that the statistics show that most retail employees say 40% of them say they've trained one time or less per year, that there's really not ongoing training and development happening in stores. So some of that also has to be self-taught. Like, what are those resources? What are those books? What are those webinars? What are those podcasts? And the company could supply them, but you may have to do some of that yourself. So I think of, more than anything, what can you do to make sure you feel safe and healthy and well to work? And that's number one. And then beyond that, it's everything we've been talking about so far, is providing the opportunities for all employees to share how they're feeling and what they need to be the best version of themselves. And when the majority of brands today have open roles, the pressure back on stores is enormous. And the idea here of their stress level has actually never been higher. It's a very challenging time to work in retail right now. And that's why it's first, you've got to take care of yourself. I personally received messages from people, because of my book all the time about, I love what I do, but I've never been more exhausted. It was such a hard holiday season this year because of COVID, because of many other reasons. It was just a really hard year, and where we can provide opportunities to take a break, potentially scale back hours. There's a lot of things we can do, but that's not what's happening. And I think the list goes on. Again, is it technology? Is it resources? Is it time? Is it payroll? What is it that's going to provide them feeling well and safe and happy and ready to get back in front of the customer again tomorrow? It's a very challenging role.
I think that's incredibly powerful, Ron, what you just said. I really do. And I think that's what the general public doesn't see, right? It's like when you go and see a play, right? You expect all the actors to come out and the show to go on, and everybody knows where they should be and the lines are right and everything like that. And retail I sometimes feel is a bit like that. We're kind of on show and we're performing. But I think you're right. I think good businesses take care of their people in all kinds of ways, whether that is through supporting them in training, supporting them in mental health, or just better paying conditions, healthcare, whatever it might be. And they're the businesses that then ultimately become successful, because right now people want to go and work for those businesses And we all know that the challenge, I mean, certainly here in the US, the challenges around hiring staff right now has never been tougher. You know, walk through any mall, walk down any main street, and 90% have got, you know, hiring signs in windows, right? So those people that put the effort in are the successful retailers. And I think the other thing that we can do for those people is allow them to share in that success as well. You know, whether that's financially or whether or not that's, you know, that's adding other benefits in, that then creates an even more powerful business. That's how you retain staff. That's how you get the, you know, that feedback that we were talking about. I think one of the things that we will see is frontline staff using far more technology, you know, handheld technology to support customers and so on. I was in Home Depot just a few days ago, and the guy was, you know, scanning barcodes to see where it was, and all sorts of things like that. You know, Walmart have invested a lot in an app about, you know, you want a product, here's the aisle, go and find it. You know, that kind of innovation. But I think embracing the team and going, listen, we're making your job easier. Here's technology that you can use, and maybe that technology then becomes their training aid as well, and so on. But I also do believe that I think staff have got to come kind of 50% of the way as well, in terms of, yeah, I want to learn, you know, and on the job learning, it was something that obviously, you know, back in the day when I was in retail on the front line, that was how you did it. But these days, retailers have a responsibility to say, look, here's all the resources you need. You come and find us. You meet us halfway with that. We'll give you everything that you need in order for you to grow and do better. And they're the people that are going to drive our industry forward.
When I'm listening to you, what comes to my mind is let people shine. And I think often days it's very hard to shine as a retail worker, as the way we define success is not appropriate. So consumer behavior has changed, and people we know since years just coming to have a conversation, to test and try a product, and then later on buy it online. And I think still in many, many retail businesses, the KPI framework is the same like 10 years back, you know, and we just measure too much, maybe the sales per square meter. How should a retail worker then outperform and really shine if we don't value brand interactions, visitation, etc., as much? And there is also something system-wise where we need to set a stage where we really value all the work our frontline people are doing right now. And I think with a higher share of, let's say, online interaction to live stream, or, you know, in Saint Laurent or wherever you can have a chat with WeChat or with WhatsApp, whatever you use, we should also count those interaction as something where we interact with the consumer. And then somewhere it doesn't matter where they buy in our ecosystems. So I think this is an important part, that beside dressing people for success, this means having the right measurement tools, but also, as you just put it in, Ron and Stephen, we need to have much better education. So we need to equip our people with the right tools and with the right capabilities. And not everyone is born to be a media star, you know. We are born to have human interactions with retail people. So we need to learn that, how to step in those new things. But most important, what it is about, that we in retail need to learn, and this is only done by the frontline people, to really capitalize those human interactions, you know, and to value those much more, independent if there is an immediate transaction or if it follows later. So that is something I wish for the retail industry, that every retailer now comes clear. We need to have a much broader KPI set. And of course, it's the time. And we should have used that in Corona already. But if you have not started yet, you should start yet to equip your people to today's world, you know. Yeah.
Absolutely.
If we take this, I think it's also, one thing is the technology and the support, which is the KPI framework. The other thing is, in my experience, coming from the retail and real estate world, it's also the mindset shift of the people who are on top. Because if they're still leading and thinking the old way, it's not going to happen. Even if you measure the right things, if they're not leading towards the right direction with utilizing the knowledge and the insights they gain from the KPI framework, it's not going to happen. It's not going to motivate as well. And I think I have no idea if there's a KPI framework out there. Maybe that's something you guys should be putting together and inform people about.
I think some brands have thought about this in new ways. And I'm just referencing a conversation I had last night with a regional manager for a big national brand. And we were having this exact conversation, but it was a bit about also educating the store teams on, it isn't just about the KPI, but here's how the work has shifted. This is why you're spending your time differently. Here's how the increase in our e-commerce business has increased your workload. Maybe you're filling from store, but this is the value that it adds then back to the company. And as the company becomes more profitable, here's how that positively impacts you. And so sometimes it just looks like more work for the store. And I think smart leaders then can just take that step back and it's like, let me teach you a little bit about how the P&L operates. Let's talk about the 5-year strategy for the brand that may include a growth in our e-commerce channel and a 3% growth in stores, or whatever those metrics look like for you. But don't assume that everyone in the field understands this. It's an office like conference room conversation you're having at the senior level. And I've always in my career, when I've had the opportunity, like teach everyone how the business operates. Even if you don't think it applies to them, how is gross margin calculated and why is it important? Because every step of the business, then they become more engaged. They become more interested in choosing retail as a career. You retain them longer because they feel like they're learning. All of this is just an opportunity for us to be better leaders and communicate differently and capture that feedback and then act and share that feedback loop back to them.
Yeah.
I think that communication thing is one of those real key components, isn't it? The as you say, whatever aspect of the business it is, it's how you communicate that effectively to the whole business, whether that is to a checkout operator or a senior buyer, but the more people understand about the aims of the business, the more people can get involved in the culture of the business, the more they understand we're doing this because of this, and this is and this how it impacts with you. Then that stops people worrying and stressing and thinking, will I have a job tomorrow? We're not going to be a store anymore. Does that mean we don't need as many people? I would love to have been a fly on the wall with somebody like Best Buy. When they said, listen, we're going to reduce our sales space. We're going to put fulfillment at the back, and our business is going to grow. And sales teams thinking, where do I go from here? What's that thing? And you're right, Ron. It's that whole, here's the strategy. This is where you fit in. This is where it works in the business. And we value you. And this is why, these are the changes, because we want to retain staff, and retaining staff is so important right now for every retailer. So I think that communication thing is such, if not the most important key component right now.
Yes, Stephen, as you say, so to me, it's then make everyone understand why their contribution count. Mm-hmm. And now thinking forward, so what's the next big thing? If it is in the beauty industry, everyone is talking about sustainability and helping people to live a more sustainable life. And I came across a couple of months ago an article about H&M in Stockholm. They put in a prototype, a big machine, a knitting machine. So you can bring your old jumper, they deconstruct the jumper, and then you can say, please make a hat out of it, or gloves, or whatever. So then your let's say your shirt comes into this machine and out comes your new hat. So, and I was thinking, as a sales consultant, usually in H&M, I'm there to clean up, the wardrobes, to hang stuff, and here and there to consult people which look they should buy or wear. But then with such a machine, with such a new innovation, you also become, a voice for the future, that you say, hey, maybe you have a jumper and maybe we should just make a different design out of it, use your machine. So you become a real friend to say, what can we do together? How can I encourage you to buy less, or to repurpose, or to recycle? So, and by that, usually I would have been the worker in the end of the chain, just making the sales. And now I become someone that really captures resources to whether bring it back into the supply chain, or to help my consumers to live a more sustainable life. So, and by that, I upgrade my contribution to the company, but also to society. And I think this is such a nice thing, where you really say it's more than just retailing or selling stuff. There is more what we jointly can do to help our planet, and also to help the company evolve. So taking this example, I think it's something that, if you ask Jens, 2022, we need to see that those developments are already happening, and maybe in 2023 they become mainstream. So we need to prepare ourselves, not just to put on our people on a screen to sell something, but also to equip them to be the entry point for circular business again. So I think there is more to come, and we all need to be on our toes to equip the fleet with the right capabilities.
If we take this as a bridge towards physical spaces, because I think that's a very good example. Thank you, Ulrike. Last time when we had the Innovation Breakfast Club around retail, we talked a lot about spaces as well, and physical spaces, and that they're not dead and so on. If we now link that to the frontline people all, or 99%, I guess, work in a physical space. So what are your experiences and your outlooks towards the future of how the physical spaces need to be shaped because of the changes that are happening, because of digitalization, because of other innovation, because of other things? Specifically, if we focus on 2022.
I mean, there are so many variables in retail anyway. From grocery to car sales. We were talking about car sales before we went live, and maybe we might get into that in a bit. But I think that kind of innovation, people always think about fashion, and think about maybe places like Walgreens or CVS. But I don't see grocery changing very much in the next few years. Maybe there'll be some more innovation around technology to help you buy. I think, and there's technology right now around tracking when you pick up objects and whether or not you engage with them, and so on. So that physical space, I don't think will change visually for some time to come. But when you look at businesses like Souk, for instance, who are using digital screens and short-term activations, and bringing in new products, I think that's a way that space might change. But then also maybe the way that shopping becomes far more of an experience. So there are places where you can relax and interact and have an online experience, or have a consultation experience, and therefore you've got frontline staff engaging more and sharing their knowledge, and building rapport. Remember, 64% of people will come back to a store and seek out the salesperson that gave them great and amazing customer service to get it again. So we should be working on pushing that number up, not going into department stores and thinking, where can I find somebody to help me? So I don't know. We're social animals, right? 78% of people want to touch, feel, and engage with a product before they buy it. So that's not going to go away. But working on capturing people's imaginations and keeping them engaged in the environment, I think is probably where that innovation in space is likely to come from. I could be totally wrong, of course.
No, you're not. But building on that, I would just say, finally, in 2022, latest, you should give up on time-consuming work. I just heard about that in grocery retail. People usually take 1/3 of their work time to change price tags. Isn't that crazy? You should be there to consult your consumers, to tell them about a new recipe or whatever, to upsell, to upgrade. But you should not waste time to print out on paper price tags and to change them every day, because through artificial intelligence and elastic pricing, prices change every day. So, and we all know that electronic price lines, this technology is available since over 20 years. Yet it is not the standard everywhere. And if you translate this from grocery, we have this everywhere in every retail category. We waste tons of hours in changing price tags, not value adding to the human interaction. Or think about that now. It started 2 years back when you had Amazon Fresh, etc., where you just scan and check in. You don't need classical tills anymore. Yet, how many billions of hours every year in retail is wasted through traditional cash line work? So I think if you lead a retail business, you should do your utmost to free up time that your human capital can meet human people, and then really have a consultation or a great experience, whatever it might be. Yeah. But we should use everything we can to take out the friction and everything that is not necessarily needed, having high-skilled retail people to stay at the cash line or to print out price tags or whatever it is. So I think we just need to commit that it is time to cut that piece out. Because if you just say, I saved 10%, it's at least 10%, but you should not waste any time on price tags or whatever it is. So I hope this is just one dimension where we truly break through and finally cutting out the friction.
I mean, I agree with you on the POS. Apple did this 15 years ago when I was running Apple stores, not having visible POS and making it all mobile, and they're better than ever at it today. They're continue to lead in that example. But I would just add a couple of things. I think this idea of omni businesses and channelless supply chains are really that's not going away. And so still today, I'm in stock rooms that they're fulfilling web orders on top of stacks of boxes, with entirely not set up for success. So I think the evolution of store design is also proper back of house with where you don't have to build a distribution center, but you need the proper tools to do web fulfillment. The idea of probably spend more time doing virtual calls just like this. Is the store set up with the proper screen and the technology and Wi-Fi? I mean, they're customer Wi-Fi. So this all sounds very basic, but it does not exist consistently. And so as you're designing spaces, is the stockroom larger and the sales force smaller? Are the fitting rooms larger now so that more people can engage and feel safe in a larger fitting room space? Because to Stephen's point, the touch, feel, experience in fashion, all that magic happens in the fitting room. And so it could be less product on the floor, bigger experiences in fitting rooms, better designed back of house. The trend in I think store design will feel very it will hopefully feel evolved because of the way that we're operating now in stores.
And it has to. You're so right, Ron, because now let's say people put themselves out. Let's say a single store can reach 1,000 customers at once with a live stream session. And then people call or order online. And then you need two weeks to fulfill because you have an old school back house, where you say you're just not able to handle the big demand that is coming then. So it needs to go hand in hand. Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
And we're unfortunately far away from that.
We are.
Yeah.
We need to bring it up. Car sales, Ron, because it was before we recorded.
I think there are so many categories when you think about retail: pharmacy, grocery, fashion. And I live in New York City. I haven't bought a car in years. As I leave New York City this year and go on a tour of retail in America, I needed to buy a truck. And what I have quickly discovered is that there are parts of our industry that have not evolved in decades. And it's just one more experience as a customer with mediocre to poor service. I won't even say it was ever better than mediocre. That it's just one example of when someone can find a new path to do something really well, that people are craving what that means. And that could be in there's a new dentistry business that's here in New York and they're expanding quickly called Tend. That, same. I do everything online. It's beautifully designed. It's clean. It's bright. It's energetic. I love to go to the dentist, so I'm strange that way. But when someone reinvented the new way to have a dentistry business, I was like, I'm all in. And the car business is just one that my personal experience in the last couple of months has been horrendous. And I would love to, I don't personally have the energy or time to reinvent it, but it needs to be reinvented.
It's interesting because the motor industry innovation, electric vehicles, builds, brands, has come so far. And yet the buying experience, as you say, at best is mediocre. And that's been that's been my experience of the motor industry as well, that they're not focused on the customer.
Right.
That's the first thing, right? 10 people jump on you when you walk into the showroom because that salesman needs to make a sale, right? But it's not about the customer, and I think we were saying prior, I think maybe that's why places like Carvana are doing so well, because they've taken this to a kind of virtual experience and cut out the aggressive salesperson who at the end of the day doesn't want to give you a discount because the more money they make means he gets a bigger commission. I think it's an industry ripe for disruption. Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe it comes, I don't know if I'm right with that, but traditionally it has been a producing industry. You produce cars and then you had a distributor who just sold the cars. But they need to think like Tesla did in the beginning, more like a vertical integrated business. That you really say it's not about just innovating the product itself, also innovating all the way through how it meets the consumer. And I think this is the part that had too little attention.
And I think that sorry, I was just going to say, I think part of it, I've owned luxury cars in the past and the service was very different. And in this, I'm buying a more traditional, I bought a traditional pickup truck. And so I think, brands like Tesla and, Rivian has started to, in the electric car space and build these showrooms and service and culture that are really special. So I think it's happening at certain price points, but I don't think, just as I very much speak to so much in the fashion space, service should not be different because of price. And that's exactly what happened here. A traditional pickup truck experience was very different than if I went to the Tesla showroom in the heart of New York City and bought a Tesla. I think the experience would be different. And I very much felt that. And I think that needs to change.
Yeah, and I think that also really Europe and also North America has a part to catch up here. If we would look now on the Chinese market, where everything is more mobile and fluid already. So probably those guys should also keep an eye on that market and speed up to bring the news to our market.
I mean, every car brand is selling lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right. And yet the experience on the ground is nothing to what they're kind of defining their brand to be. So as you say, unless you get into the luxury end of the market where they take a different view. So
bringing us home slowly, because we're reaching the hour. What will you do in 2022 to focus or to help people on the front line to innovate? Because you all work in and with retail. So I would like to squeeze a little bit, and I know Ron is already onto something which is amazing. Maybe you can share a little bit about that as well. But as well for the others, what are you going to do in 2022 to help people from the front line to innovate and or innovate together with them? Let's start with Ron.
Yeah, thank you. The way that we will innovate from the front line is by elevating and loudly amplifying the voices of people who are doing this work. And because the voices of the senior leadership team, and we've all sat in those chairs, are the only ones being heard. And the people doing the work that have all the great ideas and have all the feedback are the ones that we need to champion. And my intent to do that is to travel this country this year and meet them and hear their stories and use my platform as a way to showcase those. And innovation then comes through their confidence and their companies then listening to how important their stories are. And they really are retail heroes, and they really are doing incredible things in their communities and with each other and with their customers, and positively impacting people's lives in ways that we don't even know, because we are home. And every day they're having conversations that could end up in tearful hugs with a customer talking about their experience of the last 2 years. And those are the stories that need to be heard and shared. And my intent is to do that very loudly. And that's, I believe, where this innovation is going to change, because people will hear that story and say, wow, like I had no idea how important the work is in stores. If you've never done it, and I've spent my whole career in stores, if you've never had those experiences, you don't really know how important that work is. And I want to change that.
You will.
How wonderful. I would love to join. It's such a great mission.
You're welcome.
I could see myself.
And I will definitely add a link towards your direction into the show notes for everyone who is interested about that.
And I encourage everyone who has not to go to Ron's website
Absolutely.
and sign up. There's on Instagram or on your website to follow you and to cheer you on. Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, so what will I do? I think my mantra for this year is making people strong and let them shine, and truly see, no matter where they sit in the pipeline, to make everyone heard, and to not accept any single meeting anymore when it is about optimizing something for the customer or innovating, where not a frontline worker is as an ambassador present. So I think we really need to show in action that we bring together all the different perspectives of our business. And we should not accept anymore that someone is missing, or we should not talk about people, we should talk with people, and truly taking the time to understand the different dimensions of the total business. So I hope I can be the interface and reminding myself often to not forget anyone. So to me, it's equally important. Someone that works with process optimization has the same voice and meaning as someone that meets our customers every day. And of course, I think what I take out of this talk to be much more keen and also in detail on the things have we dressed everyone for success? So how is the entire equipment? If it is store design, if it is a ring light, if it is Wi-Fi, we need to be, much more in the details in that case in order to catch up. Yeah.
They're lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Indeed. For me, I think it's continually to talk about frontline.
Yeah.
You know, wherever we get the opportunity. You know, for me, with workshops and conferences and so on, continually to remind people about all the hard work that goes in to those guys. You know, all the hard work that they're putting in. But I would challenge everybody that listens to this anyway, that the next time you are in store, to actually think about that person's trying to help you and do a great job, and for you to be respectful of that and encouraging of that. And I think we kind of live in a world where people don't see retail staff. I don't know if you guys would agree with that, but yeah. They don't see. But when you engage with them, when you ask a question, they want to help. They want to share. They want to take you by the hand and take you to aisle 15 and go, it's there, right? So whenever physically you're in a store, think about that. Think about that person, and engage with them. And even if you just smile at them, you know, their smile back. I'm not doing the grand thing that Ron's doing. I wish I was. Actually, I wish I'd have thought of it. But that's such an innovative thing. And I think what you're going to find that you're doing, Ron, is you're going to have this little snowball, right, that is just going to roll down the hill and just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And when it gets to the bottom, it is going to just shower people with so much enthusiasm, so many stories, so much of, do you know, I didn't realize, I just didn't know. Yeah. And I take my hat off and salute you for doing that. I really think, I think that might be one of the most impactful things that happens in the retail industry in the US this year. I really do. So,
thank you.
Yeah, in the end, it comes together, right? That you say people wants to be seen, wants to be heard, and want to be involved. And I think we see them, and you see them, Ron, but now you take the next step and really hearing them and spreading their voice. And I think the world need to hear what we have to say. Great.
and the good news is that there are some retail support brands behind this to help elevate this. So Ubic, which is a very important retail training platform, is a title sponsor, as is KWI. As on the POS front, as is Spotify advertising. And so the idea here is it won't just be my voice, but having some title sponsorship behind it will actually make it even louder. And that makes me really excited. So there's a lot of momentum here in all for, I believe, the right reasons.
Yeah, awesome. Maybe Jens and myself will start a Europe version.
Exactly.
I'm up for it. I already moved last week, so I'm all up for it.
It's still in boxes.
Awesome. It was a super conversation. Thank you very much for all of your times today. I will put the links to Ron and you others as well, of course, into the show notes, so that everyone who is interested in you as a person and what you're doing and how you are working in retail, and of course, maybe we will see each other again in another Innovation Breakfast Club in the future, and maybe even a combination with whatever Ron is doing. So there are tremendous opportunities and innovation possibilities for all of us. Thank you very much for joining us today in this show. It was a pleasure having you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen and Ulrike.
Thanks,
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. You will find the links and resources in the show notes of this episode. If you would like to support the podcast, the most impactful thing you can do is subscribing to the show on any of the podcasting platforms and give me a review. This will help me to reach more innovators around the world and bring some of you into the show. If you have any question to the guest or want to engage with me, feel free to reach out to me on social media and contact me there. Thanks, and see you in the next episode.